Imagine this, you pay dues month after month. Keep your place tidy. Mind your business. And one foggy morning, your HOA president calls the cops on your family vineyard, like you're running a crime ring out of grape rows. What would you do if the person protecting property values tried to crush the only thing keeping your life together? Name's Marcus. And, I'm gonna tell you how a woman named Karen, yep, that name picked the wrong guy to bully. Dawn in Solstice Valley looks like the world's slowest exhale. Mist drifts low. The vines beat up with dew. And somewhere a hawk argues with the morning. I'm out there with pruning shears at about 5 a.m. point now. Coffee steaming in the air like a small miracle. When I hear sirens wail way down the county road. Then, boots crunch. Crunch over dry grape leaves. 2 officers step through the fog. Radios crackling. And there she is, Karen Hardwell, HOA President Extraordinaire, standing at my fence line with a phone raised, like she's filming a trophy hunt. Perfume so strong, it could file a complaint of its own. Morning, I say, calm as a church pew. Y'all out here for a wine tasting this early? Karen smiles like a cat at a bird feeder. We're here to enforce the rules. She chirps. This is a residential community. Your operation is out of compliance. You ever sip coffee while someone tries to knock the legs off your life? Tastes like metal. I glanced at my vineyard, the vines my grandfather planted when the valley was more tractors than Teslas, and thought, not today. Thing is, a few years back, I was a big city lawyer. San Francisco. Glossy floors. Conference rooms, with views that look like postcards. I billed $400 an hour. Wore suits that fit like promises. And thought winning meant an email at 2 a.m. with nice work in the subject. Then, my marriage cratered. Long story. Wrong law partner, and the divorce took everything but my last name. The only clean line I had left was a deed, 40 acres of grapes and memories. The farmhouse with creaky floors. A barn that still smelled like 1962. And my German shepherd, Barrel, who thought every delivery truck was a personal insult. I never planned to be a farmer. But waking up to dew and dirt and birds with no meeting on the calendar felt like actual therapy. The vineyard was a mess. Irrigation older than disco. Tractors that hacked and coughed like granduncles. But it was mine. And it was home. Enter Karen. If a rulebook grew legs. Bought a white SUV. And ran for queen of the cul-de-sac. That's her. Election signs in the garage. Pearls for the grocery store. A husband who builds beige palaces where fields used to breathe. She's got the smile of customer service and the heart of a parking ticket. It started with a fence. Standard agricultural fence. 6 feet of keep the deer out and the wedding guests inside. I rode the post hole digger into the earth and thought about how honest sweat feels compared to billable hours. Karen stomped up in heels that never saw soil. Clipboard. Sunglasses. A voice that could do a TED Talk on condescension. That fencing violates our community aesthetic, she announced. I leaned on the shovel. Ma'am, this vineyard's been here longer than any of these houses. Your HOA is newer than my rust. She blinked like I'd spoken in whale. Rules are rules. 2 days later, a letter arrived certified. Thick. Hungry. Cease and desist. Daily fines. copies to the bank, the paper, the county, the whole suburban orchestra in one envelope. Here's where she miscalculated. 15 years as a real estate litigator leaves you with a sixth sense for dirty tricks. I flipped open my grandfather's files, yellowed paper, tobacco smoke edges, handwriting you could trust, and found the kind of clause that makes developers chew their nails: perpetual agricultural rights. Protected by county, reinforced by the state. Old as the vines themselves. In plain English, the farm was here first. The farm gets to stay. I mailed copies to the county, CC'd the bank, and the newspaper wanted everyone to see the table I was setting, and went back to checking drippers on the lower block. That afternoon, a county inspector named Rodriguez strolled my property for hours. Barn from 1965 fine. Equipment shed from 1998 fine. Root cellar, older than most traffic lights, fine. He tucked his pen behind his ear and said, "Your exemption is ironclad. Like music." I watched Karen from the fence line, her phone tilting lower. It's funny folks like her aim for a knockout. And when it lands soft, they double down instead of walking away. Next, move an emergency HOA meeting. The Solstice Heights Community Center smells like carpet cleaner and coffee from a can. Karen had a projector, pastel graphs, and board members who nodded so hard their necks should have filed for workers' comp. Neighborhood character, harmonious aesthetics, protecting investments, corporate buzzwords dressed up like Sunday best. Then she rolled out a petition about my commercial disruption, as if Grapevines were a nightclub. A few older Valley names stood and squared their shoulders. Mrs. Patterson, retired teacher. The kind who stares you into honesty, said. Marcus's family is this valley. A murmur swept the room like wind over the vines. Karen's smile cracked. She tabled the vote for further legal review, which is HOA for I'm not winning with the microphones turned on. Walking to my truck afterward, I spotted her whispering with a man whose briefcase said, "Bill me by the minute." Okay then, if she wanted a legal brawl, she'd get one with receipts. What people don't tell you about suburban warfare is it ain't just paperwork. It's whispers, half-truths, little knives. Karen launched a Facebook group, Concerned Neighbors of Solstice Valley. Bless it, full of photos angled to make my tractor look like Godzilla. Has anyone else noticed speeding delivery trucks? Are there more flies? Rumors breed faster than rabbits when folks are scared about price per square foot. Friends got quiet. The hardware store guy who used to talk baseball went colder than a January pond. The bank started sniffing like a bloodhound that smelled a story. My farmer's market stall took side-eye like it was serving raw chicken. I sat at my kitchen table with the letters fanned out, the dog snoring, the scent of crushed leaves sneaking through the screen. And I thought, find the pattern? Predators leave footprints if you look. Public records don't lie unless someone makes them. I dug. Turns out Karen's husband, Preston, owned more land than a monopoly board. Developments built, more planned, and a quiet habit of buying farms on the cheap. Do the math. Raw land goes for peanuts compared to subdivided paradise. And my 40 acres were a golden ticket if you could scare me into selling. I called my law school buddy, Jake, environmental attorney. Voice like gravel. Brain like a filing cabinet with teeth. Textbook land grab. He said, these folks use HOAs like crowbars. The next week I hired a surveyor, should have done it sooner. I'll admit, and ordered a title search that went back to when cows had the right of way. 3 days later, he handed me a map that made me laugh out loud. My property line ran 50 feet into the backyards of 3 HOA homes. My grandfather had granted easements for construction once upon a time, but never sold the dirt. Rule 1 of farm families: don't sell the dirt. I also found a utility easement that sliced through the development like a secret path. Roads, water, power access guaranteed by law. The kind of thing that makes a developer's eyelid twitch. Karen, sensing the ground shifting, scheduled a community safety forum. She blamed me for everything from traffic to the weather. Signatures on her new petition looked so similar, you'd think a photocopier had feelings. I sat in the back, took notes, said nothing. Sometimes, the smartest play is letting your opponent keep talking. Then, the heavy envelope landed: a cease and desist written in lawyer Latin. Fancy letterhead. Threats stacked like cordwood. Public nuisance. Noise. Traffic. Improper commercial use. They gave me 72 hours to quit being me or face the legal version of a fistfight. Problem: my savings account had the personality of a sad salad. High-priced litigators weren't in the budget. But luck favors the stubborn. I drove to the courthouse with gas station coffee and a stubborn streak, and started combing records under fluorescent lights that made everyone look guilty. That's where Ethel Clerk since, forever watched me flipping dusty pages and asked what I was hunting. I mentioned agricultural heritage and she said, "Oh honey, I remember when that got filed," and vanished into the back like a magician. 20 minutes later, she slid a folder onto the counter that looked like it had fought in 2 wars and a kitchen fire. Buried in there, stamped and signed in 1987, was a historic agricultural district designation. Not a feel-good poster. Law with teeth. Any development within a set radius of heritage vineyards needed environmental impact studies, real ones. With scientists in boots, not just a developer's promise. I cross-checked Preston's projects and came up empty. No studies. No compliance. Nada. Which meant every house in Solstice Heights was riding a permit sled over thin ice. Jake laughed when I told him, "Buddy, this move from annoying to federal. You might be holding a RICO thread." While we tightened our case, the harassment leveled up. Irrigation lines sliced clean in the night. Anonymous calls to wedding clients about chemical leaks. Fake reviews claiming food poisoning and chaos. A dead fish classy at the gate. Police wellness checks at Harvest Peak. It felt like a cheap movie. Except, the costs were real. Bookings canceled. Barrels delayed. Stress chewing the edges off every day. But we documented everything. Cameras on fence posts. Time-stamped logs. Screenshots. Jake filed for a restraining order against HOA interference with agricultural operations. 18 pages of stop, messing around or meet the judge. Dr. Sarah Bennett. A soil scientist Jake roped in. Tested my water and walked the hills with a notebook. Muttering, "This is a mess," about the subdivisions. Father Miguel from the Mission Community Organizer, with calloused hands and a heart that runs on diesel, rounded up farm workers and old families who'd been squeezed and sold over the years. "You ain't alone," he told me. And I had to look away for a second. 3 HOA board members resigned in a quiet trickle. The bank started to flinch at Preston's loan numbers. Suppliers wanted cash up front. Even Karen's Facebook choir lost its soprano. Then, Preston walked my driveway at dawn with a briefcase and a smile that didn't make it to his eyes. "Marcus," he said, "I can make this all go away. A fair, generous offer." He named a number, several $1,000,000. "Quick close. Clean hands. You'd be doing the community a favor." "Preston," I said, "I wouldn't sell you this land if you offered me the moon and a matching star." He told me I didn't know who I was up against. I told him to be careful about issuing threats where microphones could hear them. He blinked. I smiled. Barrel wagged his tail like, "Sir, you played yourself?" Truth. The FBI already had a file open. Agent Rodriguez, that county inspector, wore 2 hats. Evidence piled up like split firewood, forged filings, wire transfers, pressure patterns. I kept my mouth shut and my paperwork neat. Karen's social media rants grew louder, then weirder. My taxes, my divorce, my wine full of dangerous chemicals. She posted 20 times a day, like the internet paid by the paragraph. Folks drifted away, embarrassed for her. The HOA whispered about new leadership. Preston's crews stopped showing. The mayor started avoiding public hugs with Karen. Jake set a trap wrapped in ribbon. A community mediation. Neutral setting. Everyone invited. The local news got a heads up. State investigators put it on their calendar. Dr. Bennett loaded slides. Father Miguel brought folks with stories. Ethel ironed a blouse and put on good earrings. Me, I slept for, like, 4 hours. Then walked the vines until the sky turned the color of ripe plums. I kept thinking about my grandfather's hands scarred. Careful, and how he'd hate that people who never dirtied their shoes could bully a farm. And I thought, no more. The town hall overflowed. Karen strutted in first. Pearls and power suit. A rolling case full of paper cuts. Preston, flanked by 2 attorneys who smelled like retainer fees. Cameras in the back like a low mechanical ocean. Judge Wells. Retired. The kind of woman who could silence a room with a look. Called us to order. Karen launched into theater public safety. Property values. Illegal operations. Community standards. She waved a petition like a flag. Preston followed with compromise and fair purchase price, and let's be reasonable. A few folks clapped. Most stared at the floor. When it was my turn, I opened a folder thick enough to function as doorstop and, well, told a story. I walked them from the original land grant, 1889. Perpetual agricultural rights, through the 1987 heritage designation, to survey lines sliding under backyard fences, to missing environmental studies, to wire transfers that hopped states like flatstones on a lake. I held up Ethel's rescued file and heard the intake of breath. Now, I said, I could be wrong. I wasn't. But it seems like someone built a dream on paperwork that doesn't exist. I glanced at the back row, and I think we've got friends here who want to ask a few questions. Badges moved. The room rustled. Karen yelled something about conspiracies and witch hunts. Preston's jaw clenched like a carjack. Agent Rodriguez stepped forward, calm as a hymn, with a stack of papers and a voice that didn't shake. The click of handcuffs is a small sound that changes a room forever. Karen's screams got thin and high, then cracked. Preston's lawyers talked rights and process. Cameras flashed. Fathers shifted kids behind their legs. Old farmers folded arms and didn't blink. The valley exhaled. 6 months is both long and fast, depending on which side of a courtroom you're sitting. I won't bore you with the filings. The hearings. The affidavits, you could stack them and reach the moon, but I'll tell you the beats that matter. The judge called Preston's scheme a systematic exploitation of families who love the land. He got a few years federal, not county. Karen did time too, minimum security. But prison is prison, and lost the HOA crown. The house. The pearl in every photo life. Last I heard, she's selling policies in a strip mall office, 2 counties over, and avoiding the word bylaws. But justice isn't just jail. It's restoration. Solstice Valley now carries an official agricultural heritage shield you could bend a bulldozer on. The state redrew lines. The county pinned them down. And the signs at the valley's edge read like a promise farms first. We formed the Valley Farmers Alliance, in my barn coffee, in mismatched mugs. Hay, underfoot. Barrel asleep like a bouncer. We share accountants. Seed orders. Babysitters. We teach each other to read contracts like scripture. Father Miguel's Sunday sermons braided scripture with soil science. Protect what feeds your children, and you'd better believe, pews filled up. The Solstice Heights HOA dissolved. Turns out, people don't love paying dues to an outfit that turned their cul-de-sac into Exhibit A. Some houses built on bad permits were condemned, and, yeah, demolished. Watching a bulldozer undo a cut-rate palace is strangely peaceful, like a bad haircut growing out all at once. The land's being rewilded paths. Oakser. A creek that runs clear after a winter of rain. Kids chase frogs where driveways used to glare. Business. Funny thing truth sells. Press wrote the kind of stories that make city folks plan road trips. Justice Valley wine, yeah. We rebranded. I mean, who wouldn't started flying off shelves? Weddings booked out so far, I had to buy a calendar with extra patience. People said they wanted to say vows, someplace where the ground fought back and won. We built a scholarship fund for ag students, and a summer camp, where kids plant seeds and learn dirt is not a 4-letter word. I hired Dr. Sarah Bennett to speak at the festival. Then I asked her to dinner. Then I asked if she'd like a drawer at the farmhouse. She laughed and said, "Only if Beryl approves." He did. We found a second rescue. A sleek black mutt. We named Justice because, yeah, we're corny like that. The 2 of them patrol the vines like furry sheriffs. Ethel became a local celebrity. She's writing a book, filing cabinets and felons. I kid you not, and people bring her pies like she single-handedly saved the county. Honestly, she kind of did. A year after the town hall, a man in a weathered denim jacket waved me down at the farm stand. Oregon plates. He told me his HOA tried to squeeze him. 2 different tactics. Same smell. He'd watched our story online and called a lawyer. Then another. Then a newspaper. "Thanks for the map," he said. Eyes watery, in a way that made me died. Cough and stare at the horizon. Here's what I learned: bullies don't fear rules. They weaponize them. The counterpunch is knowledge yours. Your neighbors. The clerks who remembers a drawer misfiled in 1987. Share it. Teach it. Turn it into floodlights. Also learned, wine tastes better when you earned it twice. Once from the dirt. Once from the fight. But I promised the whole story. And we're not quite done. During discovery, stacks of emails that read like people forgetting the future exists, we found threads that tied our valley to others. Same developers. Different shell companies. Same HOA tactics. Different neighborhood names. The scheme stretched across counties like a bad rash. The feds started connecting dots with string. Like in those crime shows. Except for real. They asked me to sit in rooms with glass windows and pour coffee and talk slowly. I did. I signed papers that said, witness not target. And I slept better. Karen, on probation, sent me a letter, handwritten. Blue ink. Cursive. You could teach from. It said she thought she was defending standards. That she let fear do the steering. It also asked me to speak for leniency at a hearing. I read it at the kitchen table and set it down beside the salt. Barrel sniffed it, like it might bite. I didn't speak for leniency, but I didn't speak for vengeance. Either. The court has a scale. My job's the vines. At the next harvest festival, long tables under oak. Fiddles. Kids with grape-stained mouths. Mrs. Patterson squeezed my arm hard enough to leave a mark. This valley remembers who takes care of it, she said. And it remembers who doesn't. Then she slid an envelope into my hand with checks for the scholarship fund. Folks who never met sent $20 with notes for some kid who loves the dirt. Man, if that ain't church, I don't know what is. We built a small classroom by the barn, rough cedar. Big windows. Chalk dust. We teach zoning to teenagers the way schools should have decades ago. Easements. Title searches. How to read a plat map. How to spot the sentence in a contract that steals your lunch. Sarah shows soil profiles like art. Father Miguel tells stories that turn law into people. I do the don't sign things you don't understand lecture with. More jokes than my old partners would approve. One afternoon, halfway between pruning and paperwork, a familiar white SUV idled at the gate. Karen got out in a simple dress. No pearls. Hair pulled back. She looked smaller. Like someone who'd learned the word enough too late. She asked if she could walk the rows. We did. Quiet. Mostly. She paused at the top of the hill, where you can see the whole valley patchwork of vines. Oaks. The creek, stitching it together. I didn't know what was here, she said. Not really. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is a kind of mercy. On the way back, she said, "You're never gonna forgive me, are you?" And I said, "This place isn't about you or me. It's bigger." She nodded. She left. I haven't seen her since. Every so often, I get a call from a reporter. Do I think HOAs are evil? Nah. Some do real good. Mow the parks. Keep the playground safe. Remind folks to pull the trash cans in before Tuesday. But whenever rules turn into cudgels and neighbors into targets, you'd better have your paperwork and your people ready. If you take anything from my tale, let it be this. Do not let someone else's panic about property values strip your place of its story. Your land, whether it's a vineyard or a tiny backyard with tomatoes and stubborn marigolds, holds a history. Defend it with facts, with community, with the slow, steady patience of a vine finding a trellis. And, if your HOA president named Karen shows up with a phone in your driveway at dawn, smile, pour them water, and ask for everything in writing. A few nuts and bolts things folks keep asking me in the comments. Yeah. I read 'em, while the press runs hum and the dogs snore. How'd we beat the fines, spelled out agricultural exemptions, and a court that actually read them? Every county's different, but most states protect historic farm operations. The trick is, prove your continuity old business licenses, tax filings, photographs, Sworn statements from neighbors who remember harvest before hashtags. We built a timeline longer than a church potluck and handed the court a binder that said facts, not Facebook. How'd we stop the smear campaign? Screenshots. Time-stamped. Sent to council. Not to war in the comments. Judges like boring. Organized truth. We also put up a single, calm post. All questions about our permits and practices may be directed to this email. Official documents will be provided. That took the oxygen from rumor. And, our wine club newsletter focused on sunsets and recipes instead of drama. People prefer joy. What about the cops? Good police are allergic to being used as weapons. When we showed a pattern false, reports. Timing aligned with business milestones. They stopped jumping at every anonymous call. We fed facts, not fury. How do you keep going when it feels like you're being pecked to death by ducks? You don't do it alone. You let Miguel pray with you in Spanish, even if you only catch half the words. You let Jake swear at filings and make you laugh at footnotes. You let Sarah hand you a glass of water and say, breathe. You sit with Beryl and Justice on the porch and listen to the creek say old things in a language older than courts. We found more families. Texas, Vermont, Oregon. Folks who thought they were crazy until they weren't. We started a monthly Zoom that turned into a listserv that turned into a network. The feds asked if we'd help them map the pattern. We said, sure. But we want farm families at the table. They agreed. Small victories add up like pennies in a jar. We also learned to celebrate loud. The Harvest Festival grew. We added a pie contest where the only rule is crust from scratch. We host night tours, flashlights, cricket symphonies, kids discovering owls. Weddings under the oaks carry vows that mention seasons, not spreadsheets. A fiddler name checks the creek in a song, and the room cheers like it knows a celebrity. Sometimes, late. When the bottling line is finally quiet, I walk the rows and talk to the old man. I didn't listen to enough. I tell him the valley's safe for now. I tell him we made mistakes, but we found our neighbors. I tell him the dogs are loud and the barn roof doesn't leak anymore. Yeah. We grow a cleaner Pinot than he did, because Sarah made me rebuild the drainage. I tell him we did right by his name. So here's my 5-second hook again. For anybody who wandered in late, imagine paying dues to people who think their bylaws outrank your bloodline. Imagine them sicking cops on your sunrise and calling it safety. Now imagine them learning hard that the land keeps receipts. If your HOA's trying to steamroll you, here's my quick hit list. Simple. Not easy. Put everything in writing. Per our conversation is your new best friend. Find the oldest paper in the drawer. Deeds, plats, surveys, utility easements. Misfiled gold is still gold. Build a binder judges will love. Chronology. Tabs. No drama. Partner with science. A soil core can win an argument faster than a Facebook post. Organize your people. Potluck beats panic. Stories beat slogans. Don't fight every skirmish online. Starve rumor. Feed courts. Know when to smile, and let the other side talk themselves into a hole. And one more. Learn the slow way, leave room for light. It's easy to let anger calcify. It's harder and better to plant something in that space. A class. A scholarship. A Saturday afternoon where kids learn what compost is and come home dirty and proud. I still wake before dawn. Habit. I still listen to boots in the leaves and wonder who's coming up the rows. Most mornings, it's just me and the dogs and the hawk arguing with the wind. I clip a vine. Breathe in that green sweet smell. Say a small thank you. Then get to work, because the vineyard forgives. But it doesn't farm itself. What would you do here? Has your HOA ever tried something this wild? Fines for a mailbox. Paint color violations. Letters with more threats than commas. Drop your story below. You never know who needs to hear it tonight. And, hey, if you found a piece of yourself in this, share it with a neighbor who's fighting. There's people out there, sorry. There are people who think they're alone. They ain't. Not anymore.